Vice President Barclay and Speaker Rayburn welcome Prime Minister Churchill as he arrives to address a joint session of Congress. He emphasizes that Britain seeks help only to play her part in the common defense of liberty.
I have not come here to ask you for money. To ask you for money to make life more comfortable or easier for us in Britain. Our standards of life are our own business, and we can only keep our self-respect and independence by looking after them ourselves. It is the policy of the United States to help forward in many countries the process of rearmament. That is why I have come here to ask, not for gold, but for steel, not for favors, but equipment. And that is why many of our requests have been so well and generously met. The vast process of American rearmament, in which the British Commonwealth and Empire and the growing power of united Europe will play their part to the utmost of their strength, this vast process has already altered the balance of the world and may well, if we all persevere steadfastly and loyally together, avert the danger of a third world war or the horror and of defeat and subjugation should one come upon us.
Mrs. Franklin Delano Roosevelt pays a sentimental visit to the French town of Lanois near the Belgian border. Here is situated the ancestral home of the Delano branch of the Roosevelt family. As part of the welcoming ceremonies, the mayor of Lanois presents a document making the widow of our late president an honorary citizen of this small community. He also congratulated her on her efforts for peace and social justice. Eleanor Roosevelt's goal is Lanois Castle, home of the Delano family. It was from here in the year 1624 that an ancestor of the Delano family left Lanois to settle on Manhattan Island. Conditions can be really rugged in the city of Berlin, whose split personality is controlled on the east by the Russians and on the west by the Allied command. Police of Western Berlin check incoming vehicles for contraband. Such measures are necessary to protect the Western zone's economy and its German mark. It looks like this crew bagged a smuggler. Yep, here's the contraband. Parts of furniture in this false compartment. And in the double roof, stockings and bales of textile fabrics. The smuggled goods are confiscated and added to a mounting collection in the warehouse. A strange sidelight on a city divided between two currencies and two controls.
My name is Humphrey Bogart, in case there are those of you in the audience who are either too young or too old to know who I am. I've been asked by the Treasury Department to tell you about the improved E-bond. In a way, I suppose I'm a sort of a salesman. Although I personally don't think that E-bonds need selling. You ought to be knocking at Uncle Sam's door to buy them. You see, I'm not selling you used cars, television sets, sewing machines, etc., etc. I'm selling you a stake in the future of America and the safety and security of all of us. When the Treasury Department called me, I asked them, what's the difference between an E-bond and any other kind of defense bond? Now, if you listen to me for a moment, I'll let you in on something. This new improved E-bond pays you 3%. If you hold it full time, 10 years after maturity, you get back twice as much money, or almost twice as much money as you put into it. In other words, you almost double your dough. I think that's a pretty fair proposition. The United States government stands squarely behind these bonds. Now, even better.
Iraq's 17-year-old king, Faisal II, arrives in New York aboard the Queen Mary for a 5-week official visit to the U.S. The young monarch told reporters his visit is educational. He's particularly interested in seeing irrigation projects. But the British-educated king is interested in other things American. And one of the first things on His Royal Highness's agenda is a giant Dodgers game. And who does he root for? Brooklyn, naturally. Korea, President Syngman Rhee arrives at 8th Army Headquarters in Seoul. The occasion, an expression of his nation's gratitude for the U.S. forces' defense of our Asian ally. Just returned to office by an overwhelming majority, 5 million out of 7 million cast, in Korea's first popular presidential election, Dr. Rhee reads a citation of honor. Then, as Mrs. Rhee looks on, Korea's Chief of State bestows a high award on General James Van Fleet, 8th Army Commander. A token of his country's gratitude to America and the UN. Hollywood pays tribute to bright new stars of tomorrow, chosen by film fans throughout the world in Photoplay magazine's annual Choose Your Stars poll. Top winners in the poll are honored at a luncheon with Tyrone Power as MC. Awards go to lovely Universal starlet Laurie Nelson and to Tab Hunter. Blue-eyed and blonde, Laurie triumphed over the second-ranking actress in the poll by a 3-to-1 margin. Joining all of Filmland in congratulating the lucky pair is William Getz, production chief at Universal International. A floral fantasia of horticultural headdresses enchants the eye for the benefit of charity. Produced by Oakland, California's Diablo Country Club with an assist from the Master Florists Association. Birds in a gilded cage, more than 500 flowers and 37 hours went into its composition. This imaginative creation is entitled On Wings of Fantasy, and an appropriate name for the 5-foot-wide headdress fashioned of carnations. Here's one that explains itself. It contains 1,600 chrysanthemums, carnations, and orchids. But every one of these showpieces is stunningly effective. For instance, this topical flying saucer. Spectators enter into the spirit of things, and some ornate creations are to be seen on the sidelines. Enthusiasm for the show that helps achieve the real purpose to aid the city's children's hospital. As in earlier years, the traditional fundraising ball is truly a spectacular success. Glamorous Gloria Swanson, well guarded, arrives at the Waldorf wearing the world's most expensive gown. The dress is covered with 100,000 cultured pearls. It is worth $100,000 and weighs 30 pounds, as Miss Swanson can tell you. It took 15 years to gather the pre-war cultured pearls, and 8 dressmakers worked 2 years to complete the job. The beautiful stage and screen star, of course, wears the proper accessories. The Imperial Pearl Syndicate is donating the gown to the Damon Runyon Fund for Cancer Research. This fabulous costume will first be shown at a series of benefits throughout the country. Fashions come a la carte at this youngster's style show in Copenhagen, Denmark. All the latest models are on parade during the exhibition of junior creations for the young miss and the young master. Critical eyes watch approvingly from the sidelines and note that it is not always fair weather you must prepare for. Also, every wardrobe must include a cowpoke outfit. More formal attire, the girl of your dreams and the new creation you've dreamed about. And speaking of dreams, it's time to say good night. Hey, watch your language there, young fella. Hollywood turns out for the Oscar Awards by the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences. Andy Bloomberg, president of Universal International Pictures, and Mrs. Bloomberg lead a parade of celebrities, including Mr. and Mrs. Jimmy Stewart. The night is bright with stars. Julia Adams is here with her husband to witness the presentations. Shelley Winters and Vittorio Gassman attend the 24th Annual Awards, as do Donald O'Connor and Mrs. O'Connor, and that grand old veteran of the screen, Charles Coburn. It was a year marked by fine films. Lovely Greer Garson accepts the award for Vivien Leigh and stands by to present an Oscar to Humphrey Bogart. Miss Leigh's award was for Best Actress and Mr. Bogart's for Best Performance by an Actor. The many excellent films produced during the year made a close contest. At the Political and Security Committee meeting of the 7th session of the United Nations Assembly, the spotlight falls dramatically on Secretary of State Dean Acheson as he prepares to outline the United States position on the Korean War. It is a tense assembly that hears America's leader of foreign policy, in calm and measured tones, issue an indictment of Russia's role in the present conflict. During the presentation, the Soviet foreign minister takes copious notes. Acheson questions Russia's good faith on the armistice.
Perform what seems to us and some of our associates in the United Nations to be one of our preliminary steps in the consideration of this Korean question. That is to find out further, if we can, whether the communists really wish to have an honest armistice in North Korea.
His address is warmly greeted by a majority of the Assembly, and he receives the congratulations of diplomats of the Western Bloc. Once again, free nations and countries of the Iron Curtain bloc face each other before the Parliament of Nations, and calm reason prevails. Democratic presidential nominee Adlai Stevenson and his running mate, Senator Sparkman of Alabama, arrive at the White House for a strategy conference with President Truman. A Washington crowd is on hand to view the new standard bearers as they go into a huddle with the chief executive. The president has promised his full support to the Illinois governor and has offered to campaign actively on his behalf. While the Democratic High Command confers, General Eisenhower and his political advisors gather in Denver to map Republican plans. John Foster Dulles is high in the councils as he helps chart a foreign policy course for Senator Nixon, vice presidential candidate, and General Ike. On their decisions rest GOP hopes as the curtain rises on one of the most fateful election years in American history. Egypt's strongman, General Mohammed Naguib, appeals to the people to meet the first major challenge to his reform program. The powerful anti-British Waft Party defied Naguib when he ordered that corrupt leaders be expelled, including the popular Nahas Pasha, once Farouk's premier. In reply, Naguib toured the congested peasant districts of the Nile Delta to be met with fanatical enthusiasm, an unmistakable popular verdict in his favor. The Waft capitulated, clearing the way for Naguib's much-needed reform program to better the lot of Egypt, one of the world's most poverty-stricken nations. A new Bunker Hill makes history. This one's in Korea, in our hands at the moment, and U.S. Marines are busy seeing to it that Bunker Hill remains in our hands. Enemy bunkers on Bunker Hill get a going over from grenades as the Leathernecks close in for the kill. A dose of their own medicine slows them down, but only temporarily. His machine gun is jammed, but his isn't, and he pins down the Reds dug in ahead of the advancing Leathernecks. Things are quiet in the truce tents at Panmunjom, not far distant. But on this one small sector of the Korean front, action flares briefly as a Marine detachment carries out its assignment to blast them out or burn them out of their last remaining foothold on Bunker Hill. For the moment, at least, the situation is well in hand. Cuba once again experiences a revolution. The regime of President Carlos Prios Sacaras is ended by a combined group of younger elements of the Army, Navy, and Police, headed by former President Fulgencio Batista. The revolution, kicked off at 2:43 in the morning, lasted little more than an hour. In another coup staged in 1933, Batista started a rule of disciplined democracy, which lasted for 11 years. This time, the overthrow of the government is almost bloodless. 2 palace guards were slain, and shortly after, deposed President Priol and members of his cabinet took off by plane for Mexico. The former sergeant, now General Fulgencio Batista, comes to Camp Columbia, Cuba's key army base, with his supporters to address his troops and present his case to his countrymen. Batista said he had lost confidence in the Priol government and intends to maintain law and order as a friend of the people until a free election. Sports in Retrospect, a look back on the sporting scene in 1952. Big news, big crowds, a big year for thrills and excitement. A slow-motion study of a favorite striding to victory in the Kentucky Derby. His name, Hill Gale, the classic colt of Calumet Farms, ridden by an old hand at Derby triumphs, Eddie Arcaro, his fifth coming up. Man and beast romping into Turptom's Hall of Fame in 1952. A year that saw 37 out of the 47 starters come a cropper in England's pulse-tingling steeplechase, the Grand National. 4.5 miles, 30 grueling obstacles, the road to glory but for one. Disaster for most of the others. The favorite has fallen, and now 13 is a lucky number for a 10-year-old named Teal, second choice of the 250,000 racing fans. Big day at Aintree, England. Boxing, and a new heavyweight champ, Rocky Marciano of Brockton, Massachusetts. Felled in the first round by the aging Jersey Joe Walcott, the 28-year-old ex-GI came back strong in a drama-packed 13th. A right-handed jaw crusher knocked Jersey Joe loose from his senses and his title. Exit Walcott. Enter Rocky Marciano. One punch gained him the richest crown of boxing. A big year in baseball, and the big story in baseball, the Yankees and their winning ways. They did it again with young stars like Mickey Mantle at the plate and veterans like Allie Reynolds on the mound. The American League leaders kept a tight grip on their World Series crown by subduing the Brooklyn Dodgers 4-3. It was their fourth straight World Championship under the managerial genius of Casey Stengel. Will it be number 5 for old Case in 53? Time will tell. The basketball scandals of 51 were all but forgotten by the end of the 52 season when the Cinderella team from Philadelphia, the LaSalle Explorers, captured the hearts of basketball fans in the National Invitation Tournament. The most underrated quintet of the 12 college teams entered. LaSalle took on the top-seeded teams and then took the play away from Dayton in the finals. A big upset and a big story of the year in basketball. Invitation to jubilation in New York. Memorial Day at Indianapolis, the big day of the year for auto racing, and a big field out for fame and fortune in the 500-mile Speedway Classic on the famous brick track. When he started, the pace was telling, and some did not finish. Bill Vukovich was leading with only 8 laps to go when this happened. And then the checkered flag signaled the emergence of a new Speedway king, the youngest driver and the heftiest, Troy Ruttman of Linwood, California. Big baby of the 500 in 1952. Big story of the Summer Olympics was the participation of Russian teams. The boys who did and died for Uncle Joe brought, along with a temporary smile of good fellowship, their own scoring system. We won, they told the home folks. Everybody else knew who won, but everybody else was busy applauding performers like Emil Zatopek of Czechoslovakia, winner of 3 events in distant racing. Zatopek's unprecedented triple victory was one of the highlights of the games that saw Uncle Sam's star-spangled athletes achieve their greatest Olympic triumph ever at Helsinki. Another standout thriller was the 100-meter dash, so close the camera had to pick the winner, Lindy Rivaccino of New York. Moment of glory for winners, where masked flags and the Olympic torch were backdrops for the final act of sport's greatest drama in a great year for sports. 50,000 football fans at Cleveland see the Detroit Lions get going against the Cleveland Browns in the playoffs for the pro title. Texas Bobby Lane to Bill Swiacki, and the Lions are knocking at the payoff door. On a quarterback sneak, Lane bangs the door open, and the Lions, though outgained in every department, are never overtaken. They took the best Otto Graham and his brother Browns had to offer, stymied several scoring threats, and rough, you bet. Ooh, that hurt. Darrell Brewster must think a truck hit him. The Browns had won 5 pro titles, and with Harry Jagady bowling for yardage right now, Cleveland rooters take heart that the home team may do it again. But their hopes are short-lived. There's nothing like a pass interception to slow the opposition down. Graham hits his man, but it's deflected. And Jim David intercepts. The Lions are a big step closer to their first pro title in 17 years. It's practically clinched when Doak Walker of SMU fame breaks loose for the longest play of the game. 67 yards for a touchdown. They can't catch it. 17 years is a long time between titles, and this is the year that the lion roared. With new cars getting bigger and parking spaces getting smaller, at Piedmont, California, an inventor has developed something to soothe the motorist's headache by putting the spare tire to work. He calls this device the park car and says it can be installed on any model. Watch how it works. Taking power from the drive shaft, the spare tire swings the rear end into the clear. Then he just retracts the spare, backs into the street, and away we go. It's handy for parking in inaccessible garages, too. Here's a narrow driveway, but with the spare tire put to work, the car can turn a complete circle in its own radius, and parking is simple indeed. Even the worst driver can make the garage without denting a fender with the aid of fifth-wheel driving. High point of an exhibition of watches and jewelry in Geneva, Switzerland, are mechanical figures rivaling real life in their amazing actions. The Caterpillar was made 200 years ago. Swiss watchmakers created the intricate miniatures in their spare time. Here's a tiny music box with animated puppets no bigger than your thumbnail. Musical mechanics in a merry mood. Little gems of artistic precision. Here are some carved wood automatons created by makers of cuckoo clocks. A cobbler at his last and his wife gets in the last word, driving him cuckoo, I suppose. Perhaps he wishes he had wings like a bird. You'd think they were real. They certainly sound realistic, but I'll let you in on a secret. This is an inside job. Among the exhibits are the world-famous Neuchâtel dolls made in 1774, and the most famous of these is one called simply the Artist. A perfectionist like the watchmaker who constructed him years ago, the Artist is truly a creature of the machine age, and his steady hand has never faltered down the years. With care, he and his musically mechanical companions will live forever. If you stumbled upon these Dutchmen in the woods near Overveen, you might wonder what's going on. No, they're not fugitives from a Volga boatman. The Russian hop is just part of their training. If you think they look like skaters, you're absolutely right. They are skaters, getting in shape for the Winter Olympics in Norway. It's sort of a pre-flight training here. Once their muscles are in tip-top condition, these Dutch champs will take off for a real workout on the ice. They're learning the ground rules first. Soccer has gone to the dogs in Paris with surprising results. Using a balloon for a ball, trained boxers stage a sporting free-for-all that brings down the house. Keeping the ball in play with a stick, their referee trainer spends a lot of time on his backfield. He's a hound for punishment. Though chained to his post, the goalie saves the day as the foe puts the bite on him. They're barking up the wrong tree. All together, lads. Hot diggity dog. Now that weighs the wolf. What's a haystack doing in the middle of London? Why, to hide a needle in and dramatize the old saying. It's sewing week in old London town, so here we go to find a needle in an haystack. The guy or gal who finds it wins a brand new sewing machine. At home, if Mama lost a needle, she wouldn't exert herself like this. She'd know that when Papa sat down, the needle would turn up. Get the point? So far, no luck. Things are only so-so. But you'll have to admit the search party is giving out with the horsepower. They just need a little more time. a magnet availed its owner naught. Luck was enough for Rhoda Selby, who now threads her way through the throng to receive her coveted award. Cat stuck in tree may be an old story to you, but to the good folk who live on the Rue Paul Féval in Paris, it is new and dramatic. Seeing what waits for her below makes Kitty all the more keen to stay where she is. 4 days in a tree is no picnic, but keeping tabs on Tabby is a mortal enemy. And Chatonette, that's her name, says, not yet. You want I should go to the dogs? Closer, closer. Oops! Into the net goes Chatonette. 9 lives still to go. Paris can rest easy, and an army of rescuers can be demobilized. Now, if somebody will hold the dogs, Chatonette can get a square meal and 4 square tall trees from now on. May we drink hearty, and we will drink with you. Canada pays tribute to Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth with a life-size statue of butter. Over 2,000 pounds of fresh grade A farm butter were used by sculptor Owen Butler in his masterpiece, which depicts the Queen in her uniform as Commander-in-Chief of the Grenadier Guards. Just a final pat or two, and the statue is ready for display at the Canadian National Exhibition in Toronto. One might say it looks good enough to eat, and that's its eventual fate. After the exhibition, it will be washed, sterilized, and eaten. But the work will be preserved for posterity in a plastic cast. So far, nobody has churned up any objections in England, where butter, even for the Queen's table, is strictly rationed. The statue, in fact, is considered to be in very good taste. But now an abrupt change in tempo as the Jitterbug Jive contingent takes over. These acrobatic hepcats have the floorboards jumping. Solid, man.